On behalf of Pricol Limited, I wish to thank each one of you for taking the time out from your busy schedule and from multiple events that are happening in this city. We appreciate this gesture. Today is a big day for all at Pricol as the company unveils its new brand identity. I would now like to introduce you to the company's spokesperson. Joining us today on this significant occasion is the company's Managing Director, Mr. Vikram Mohan, Mr. Sundararaman J, President Pricol Limited. And I would also like to introduce to you Mr. Ganesh PM, Chief Marketing Officer, and Mr. Sridhar J, Group Finance Director of Pricol Limited. I would now like to call upon Mr. Vikram Mohan to address the gathering.
A very good afternoon to all of you, and thank you once again on behalf of Pricol and my colleagues here today. Probably not the best time to have a press meet or an interview session, because this is the peak snooze zone, I always call it. Even I hate this 3 o'clock myself, because after a heavy lunch, we all tend to nod off. It's a very human tendency. So I do hope that I keep you enthralled enough, entertained enough to keep you all awake for the rest of the proceedings. And I'd like to keep it as brief as possible and have more of a question and answer session. So without much ado, thank you once again, and welcome to the unveiling of our new brand identity. And I'll also talk about our plans for our Vision 2020. Pricol is a 40-year-old company founded by Mr. Vikram Mohan, who's my father and the chairman of the company. We started off manufacturing the small, round mechanical gauges, probably an equivalent of which, a modern equivalent of which you'd see in a TVS 50 moped. That was what we started manufacturing with about 14 employees in a very small 3,000 square foot space. I think we've come a reasonably long way over these years. We felt it was time to refresh and unveil a new brand identity that reflects our aspirations and our vision, and also our global outlook, because we believe that we are no more playing in an Indian marketplace but in a global marketplace. And as we embark on creating this global manufacturing footprint, we felt it was relevant to refresh and create our new brand identity. As I mentioned, we are about 40 years old. We have 4 wholly owned subsidiaries, one in India, one in Indonesia, one in Brazil, and a trading house in Singapore, which is basically a procurement office. We closed our year last year with a consolidated revenue of 1,150 crores, with 8 manufacturing locations, 7 international offices, 5,100 dedicated employees, and a R&D workforce of 275 spread across the world. What you see today,
previous slide, the pie chart, others, can you sort of break it?
Others is widely distributed amongst the public holdings. Okay. We are a listed company, it's widely distributed public holdings. We do have some mutual funds and financial institutions, but I think none of them hold more than 2 or 3%.
You would share the PPT with us?
We'd be happy to do that.
It will be uploaded in our website today itself.
Thanks.
40%.
40.2 is from what is voted.
And 59.8 is others. A widely distributed public shareholding. We're listed in the NSE and BSE. This is our old brand identity, which has been around for a long time. And we just thought we'd get a little more dynamic, sharper, more forward-looking. So this is the new brand identity, and I'll shortly take you through the listen and what does this signify instead. Primarily the people, customers, employees, shareholders and suppliers working together in a synergistic manner, in a converging manner to create value for each other. Because without a customer, an employee cannot enhance his value. Without an employee, a shareholder cannot. Without a shareholder, a supplier. Without a supplier, a customer. So it's a very synergistic relationship and working in a convergent manner to create value for each other. That's the primary meaning of this new logo. And we've got into a more vibrance to represent our diversity both within India and outside of India. Our vision, we will strive to attain leadership and excellence in all the products and services that we provide through socially and environmentally acceptable means. This is very, very important for us as an organization and as a founding family, that we give back a good part of our earnings for social causes and environmental causes wherever we operate. Our vision is to be dynamic, constantly innovate and find better ways to deliver value to our customers, constantly evolve, improve in every sphere of our activity, work with a lot of passion to enhance value to our customers, employees, suppliers and shareholders, and be sustainable, which is care for the society and environment around us. Our core values is something that's very, very believe it's very important for every associate of ours, all our 5,100 people associated with us, to imbibe this core values and make it a way of life for us to be successful as an organization. Passion, respect, integrity, collaborative work, ownership for our actions, and listen. And you would notice that the first letter of each of these core values add up to become Pricol, P-R-I-C-O-L. Just to give you an idea of where we have operations, we have one plant in Pantnagar in Uttarakhand, we have a plant in Gurgaon, we have a plant in Pune, we have two plants in Coimbatore, we have a plant in Sao Paulo, Brazil, we have a plant in Jakarta, Indonesia. We have international offices both for engineering, sales and marketing in Chicago, Detroit, New Jersey, Tokyo, and our purchasing office, international purchasing office in Singapore. Just a quick snapshot of our various facilities. I can see our facility in Indonesia there. I can see our facility in Brazil there. Two plants in Coimbatore. We have a Pantnagar plant, we have a Pune plant, and we have a Gurgaon plant as well. Just to give you an idea of our product range, product verticals. This is part of our reorganization in recent times, where we have decided to focus on certain product verticals and become market leaders in such product verticals. The primary product vertical at this point of time continues to be our driver information systems and sensors. One of your colleagues was just asking me a little earlier, what is driver information systems? It's your good old instrument cluster. You know, the speedometers, fuel gauges, etc. Earlier it was just gauges, but today as automotive evolution is happening, you would notice that today navigation has come into an instrument, entertainment has come into an instrument, entertainment control has come into an instrument, climate control has come into an instrument. So it's now more globally called as a driver information system rather than an instrument cluster. And the twin of the driver information system is the sensors, because without sensors we can't. So you need a pressure sensor to give us pressure indication. You need a temperature sensor to give us temperature indication, a speed sensor to give us speed indication, fuel level sensor to give us fuel information. So these are very mapped with each other. So that's one family, which is the driver information systems and sensors, which was our core business, continues to be a significant portion of our revenues, but the other vertical that's catching up very fast and possibly going to overtake that vertical is our pumps and mechanical products. We manufacture oil and water pumps for a wide range of applications. Later in the presentation, you would notice, you would have all the details. And mechanical products going with the pump architecture and the engine architecture. A newer, the third is the vehicle telematics and body control and security solutions. Again, I was talking to a colleague who had come in earlier. The vehicle parking systems, or it was earlier called the reverse parking system. Globally, it's now called the park assist systems. As spaces are becoming tighter, roads are becoming more congested, cars are getting larger, people need assistance for parking. So that's area we are playing with. And body control modules. Today you have more and more warning systems in the car that your door is open, seat belt has not come on, and everything. And all that eventually gets fed into the instrument cluster as an indication. So those are the body control modules. And the telematics. Vehicle telematics is an area that we feel will not be a component play, but a solution play for us. Because it involves a lot of hardware and software. And later I will talk about some of our successful forays there, where we've become a global partner to certain companies in vehicle telematics. And finally, coming to the asset management solutions, which also takes off from the telematics, which is asset tracking and monitoring systems. You have companies like JCB, Hitachi, Komatsu, Caterpillar, which have huge pieces of construction equipment, mining equipment working in remote areas. And the fleet owners would like to know how it's getting performed, what's the maintenance schedules, etc. And that's an area where we have made some rapid strides in the last 2 to 3 years. And things like automated lubrication systems, digital fare meters, and speed governors. Recently, legislation has come after the incident with the late Sri Gopinath Munde when he passed away in Delhi. The BJP government pushed a legislation saying speed governors for commercial vehicles coming out in this country have become mandatory. And Pricol is the largest supplier of speed governors in this country. We've been in the business for 10 years, but that business will significantly grow for us. The segments that we cater to, the two-wheeler, three-wheeler, cars and vans, tractors, commercial vehicles, off-road vehicles, and the select industrial segments like generator manufacturers and certain industrial product manufacturers. So you'd notice here that we pretty much span the entire automotive segment. For a two-wheeler, telematics, instrument cluster, fuel pump module, fuel level sensor, speed sensor, auto decompression unit, the AFC or the auto fuel cock, chain tensioner, oil pump, and the water pump, and the body control module. All of these are ongoing programs for us with various two-wheeler manufacturers. In a car, again, we manufacture instruments, fuel pumps, a variety of sensors, pumps, body control modules, and telematics. Commercial vehicles, we have aspirations to become global player here in many of the segments that we are operating in, like the centralized lubrication systems, pumps, clusters, and telematics. Tractors and off-road vehicles, again an area where we want to be a global leader, and a variety of products that we manufacture for this segment. We also cater to all-terrain vehicles globally, and these are the products again, the same family of products, albeit with different specs and operating conditions because of vibration and operating in snow and in desert conditions. We pretty much have the who's who of two-wheelers. In fact, the one thing I'm very proud to share with you today, Pricol has the biggest customer mix of two-wheelers globally. So if there is a two-wheeler instrument manufacturer globally, Pricol has the largest customer Rolodex among them globally, which means we supply to the BMWs, the Bajajs, the Hondas, Kawasaki, Suzuki's, Triumphs, KTM's, Royal Enfields, Yamahas, Hero, Harley Davidson, TVS. So pretty much every global two-wheeler maker of repute is a customer of ours for one product or the other, except for the small Chinese manufacturers, because as all of you know, the Chinese two-wheeler industry is extremely fragmented, over 120 two-wheeler manufacturers, but every other global manufacturer is our customer today. Our four-wheeler personal passenger vehicle portfolio is probably a little smaller, but nevertheless, we do supply to European manufacturers like Fiat, Renault, Volkswagen, Indian manufacturers like Mahindra, Japanese like Mitsubishi, American manufacturers like General Motors, Toyota, so on and so forth. Commercial vehicles, we pretty much supply everyone globally. Nissan, AMW, Ashok Leyland, Daimler, Eicher, Force Motors, MAN, Scania, Volvo, Swaraj Mazda, Volvo, etc. Tractors, we are present in every single large global manufacturer across the world, not just in India. Off-road vehicles, like I was mentioning, the mining vehicles, construction equipment vehicles, we are present in at least about 8 global customers, Indian and global customers. And ATV, industrial segment and others, ATV for example, we are in the Arctic Cat or Polaris, both in India and abroad. And in the industrial segment, we supply to Deutz, Kirloskar, Kohler, Lombardini, which are primarily engine manufacturers. Product-wise, revenue share, our driver information system and telematics comprises about 50% of our revenue, and this is for the year ending 2014-15, which is about a year ago. This year's figures as we close for the March will be slightly different. The powertrain products, which is the oil pumps and all the other products, would comprise about 38%, but this year we would close at probably about 45%. Driver information systems would have come to about 45%, so would be almost equal. The sensors is about 11%, and the fleet management solutions, which is the new foray of telematics that we have gone into, and asset management solutions is about 2%, but a very rapidly growing segment and a hugely profitable segment going forward for us. Revenue share, two-wheeler comprises about 44% of our revenue. This was for last year. For this year, it would possibly be about 40% because we've grown in the four-wheeler segment. Not that we've de-grown, we've still grown in the two-wheeler, but the four-wheeler has grown at a larger pace. Four-wheelers about 23%. This year we'd probably close with about 30%. Tractors, off-road vehicles comprise about 4%. Three-wheeler and others all comprise smaller portions of our revenue. The way forward. We are expected to close this March, which is about 60 days away, 2.5 months away. We closed last year with about 1,150 crores of revenue. We are expected to close this year with 1,450 crores of revenue, which is over a 20% growth. Pricol today is the world's second largest manufacturer of driver information systems for the two-wheeler segment. The largest in the world is Nippon Seiki. Pricol is the second largest in the world, but with the largest customer portfolio, as I mentioned to you, all of you. Our aim is in 2020, because in the bottom I have put our vision for 2020 is to take this 1,450 to 3,000 crores. So I would talk about how we'd like to go about achieving that milestone or aspiration. Manufacturer of automotive pumps for the two-wheeler segment, oil and water pumps. World's fourth largest manufacturer of instrument clusters for tractor and off-highway vehicles. India's largest manufacturer of telematic solutions for the tractors and off-highway vehicle segments. India's largest manufacturer of speed governors and cabin tilt mechanisms for the commercial vehicle segment, and among the top 10 global manufacturers of automotive sensors. So this is where we are today, and our aspiration resulting in a revenue of about 1,450 crores. Today we have manufacturing plants in India, Indonesia and Brazil, and as we move towards 2020 on this 4-5 year journey, we are hoping to have manufacturing plants in Mexico and Vietnam. We are hoping to acquire manufacturing plants in Germany and the United States to make us a more global company. You may ask us the question, how we are planning to achieve that. It would be primarily through internal accruals. We have mapped the amount of cash that we would generate in the next 4 years, because we have confirmed businesses for the next 3 years, 4 years. And also we are an almost debt-free company. So we are an unleveraged company, and that's how we hope to achieve this. We have a new plant coming up in Pune, which will get commissioned in May of 2016. It's going to be a state-of-the-art, world-class plant in Pune. Vietnam, a greenfield plant which would become operational in the next calendar year. And Mexico, because by 2018, Mexico is expected to be the 4th largest automotive market in the world, and we've decided we need to have a manufacturing presence if we have to be a global player. And to become a global player in the pumps and sensor space, we have decided we have to have an acquisition of a company to accelerate our growth in Europe in both these areas. And
Mexico when?
no. 2018, Mexico's expected to be the 4th largest market. So in this journey, by 2020, we expect to have manufacturing presence in Brazil, an acquisition of a company in pumps and sensors in Europe, and one in the United States, where then we would be a global player. Why Vietnam? Vietnam has a great cost arbitrage, lowest cost of machining, and probably a very fine engineering qualified workforce, which will probably become our base for the ASEAN region going forward, because Indonesia is not lucrative anymore for growth because of the political climate there, or the political outlook. So our growth in the ASEAN will come from Vietnam. And also thanks to the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it makes eminent sense to have manufacturing in Vietnam as an export base for America, Japan and Australia, as well as a domestic manufacturing base to cater to the entire ASEAN region, because of the cost arbitrage and availability of talented workforce, both blue collar and white collar. We are currently the world's 2nd largest manufacturer of driver information systems for the 2-wheeler segment or instrument cluster. Our competitor is Nippon Seiki, Japanese company, much older, over a century old. They are currently 5 times our size in not volume, but by turnover. But we have the advantage now of getting global with multiple plants globally, and having the biggest customer mix globally. So our aspiration in 2020 is still to be number 2, but to bridge the gap, to go from being 5 times, Nippon Seiki being 5 times our size, we are hoping by 2020 they will be 3 times our size. India's largest manufacturer of automotive pumps for the 2-wheeler segment. As a natural progression, we have now got into the 4-wheeler segment, and by 2020 we want to be among the top 3 manufacturers of automotive pumps in the South Asia region for the 4-wheeler segment as well. We are the world's 4th largest manufacturer of instrument clusters for tractor and off-highway vehicles. Our aspiration is to be among the top 3, though internally we are aiming for number 2 globally. India's largest manufacturer of telematic solutions for the tractors and off-highway vehicle segments. We want to become India's largest manufacturer spanning all segments. India's largest manufacturer of speed governors and cabin tilt mechanisms for the commercial vehicle segment. We want to take our speed governors outside of India also, as well as the cabin tilt mechanisms to be a global player, because we are supplying the who's who of the world in India, like Daimler, like Volvo, like Scania, like MAN, and we have started doing business with them globally as well for the automatic tilt mechanism for the cabin. We're among the top 10 global manufacturers of auto sensors, and if we have to grow our instrument business, we have to grow our sensor business. And as vehicle technology is growing, the number of sensors in a vehicle will keep growing. Emission sensors are going to become a very big thing. In fact, we have emission sensors under development today. So we are looking at partnering with companies to buy technology, and buy companies with technology, and buy companies with manufacturing footprint, like I mentioned, both in Europe and in the United States, to grow this segment of our business, which will support our growth in the other segments. So our vision for 2020 would be to have a top line of 3,000 crores from the 1,450 crores today, which is CAGR of about 20%, which is a little lower than what we have achieved this year. These are projections that we have mapped with a clear sort of strategy. This would entail having manufacturing footprints in Mexico and Vietnam, and an acquisition of a manufacturing footprint in Europe and the United States for pumps and sensors. So this is broadly where we are today and where we hope to go over the next 4 years.
For what product?
Pune would be for our entire range of products: instrument sensors, pumps, and instrument sensors and pumps, which would go on stream in May 2016.
Your 2020, you said these countries you want to set up the manufacturing plant: Mexico, Vietnam, and all.
Mexico and Vietnam for sure. Mexico, based on how the economy and everything is panning out. If Mexico becomes the 4th largest player by 2018, we will naturally have to go there.
So have you identified?
Mexico will have to be greenfield in a small manner. Vietnam will be greenfield. Europe and North America will be inorganic route, like I mentioned, acquisition, specifically of companies in the pumps and sensor space to give us a global footprint.
I allocated to some money for the acquisition. Can you share it with us? What kind of amount you have?
For our greenfields and acquisitions, we are looking at about 500 crores of investments over the next 4 years. 500 could become 400, could become 600, because depends on the target company and the size of the acquisition.
Similarly, can you give number for the Pune plant investment?
Pune is, Pune we already have an existing plant, which we have decided to modernize, but since we didn't have the provision to modernize there, we decided to build a new plant, which will become a world-class plant, because we expect our Western region business to.
Separate facility.
It's a brand new facility. We've decided to go into an asset-light model, because one of the other ways we've looked at is, rather than own the land and real estate like traditionally companies used to own, we are getting people to do build-to-suit plant for us and putting that investment into the machinery, and which is how we would like to operate in a Mexico, which is how we would like to operate in a Vietnam, because we are not in the business of real estate, and today real estate is very, very expensive in many developed and developing countries like India, and so we would like global business park or industrial park operators to build a build-to-suit factory for us, and we put our money into the machines which actually churn out cash for us. And that's how, with a figure of between 400 and 600 crores over the next 4 years, we'd be very comfortably able to set up this manufacturing.
What is the forecast in domestic and international market?
Now, that's a very tough question and a very long answer I perhaps have to give you, because we span about 7 market segments, multiple geographies. For example, the worst performing of our entities would possibly be Brazil. As all of you know, Brazil is going through a very, very difficult time economically and politically. The market has degrown, and I think next year, 2016-17, the market will be where it was in 2007. And the market will go back to 2000, normal levels probably by 2020. Now, so Brazil is actually degrowing by about even 3% this year. Indonesia is growing in mid single digits. India, two-wheeler, high single digits. India, tractor, low single digits. So every segment, every geography has a different potential. And my colleague Ganesh, who's our chief marketing officer, and his team have a complete team of business analysts who keep putting together these reports and depending on external reports. So if you ask me what is a growth number, it's very impossible for me to tell you. That's why I just told you, I just gave you an idea of Brazil, I gave you an idea of Indonesia,
Yes.
I gave you an idea, United States is clocking some growth, Europe is slowing down. So
The second question is, do you have any planned products online for the next 4 years?
we don't have any new products. I mentioned some new products like the emission control sensors, which we have developed. Are developing asset management and telematics business, which has just got out of incubation and will now start seeing revenues and get into scale. This would be, from being an instrument manufacturer, we will be more of a telematics asset management, not only doing those, but that would be a much faster growing business for us because we are starting from a low base.
So the Brazil plant.
There's nothing planned in Brazil. We already have a plant in Brazil. It's an acquisition that we made last year. Vietnam is a greenfield that is being planned for 2017.
Right now, what stage?
So it's being planned. It's meaning it is the feasibility studies of which is the best location. Is it going to be HCMC Ho Chi Minh, or is it going to be Hanoi? Which is the best location, size, etc. We are talking to, again, like I said, industrial park operators to identify the right parks that we are going to operate in. We actually have a team on the ground from our Indonesian plant working in Vietnam on the feasibility of that project today.
Is a milling to Brazil?
It is an ex-Dana plant which was bought by Milling do Brazil many years ago, and we acquired it in January of 2000, end of January 2015.
Okay. So by that you entered into the four-wheeler segment, and will you be?
We were already in the four-wheeler segment in India, but we entered into new customers like Fiat, General Motors, Volkswagen, the pumps, and in terms of technology, they had some phenomenal technology. So this plant was bought for two reasons: one for customer access, one for access to a market that we were not present in, and three for technology, which had we gone and tied up with another overseas company that had developed this technology, we would have ended up paying a huge amount of technology and fee and royalty fee. So it's a combination of these three reasons. Unfortunately, the market has gone through a very bad time. When we acquired that plant in January of 2015, which is exactly a year ago, 23rd of January to be precise, a year ago, the real was at 2.3 to the dollar, the Brazilian real. And today the Brazilian real is a little over 4.2 to the dollar. That's had a major impact on that business. But these are certain things. We are not economists, we are not astronomers who are able to predict so much of the future. So there is a strategy that we made, and the strategy is still working out. If someone here asks me, did I make a mistake buying a plant in Brazil? My answer is still no. I think it was right. It was just that it's unfortunate that the economy took a toss, and it will probably take us a little longer to recover our investments there.
Products to the Indian market.
That's exactly what I mentioned. So that is the technology we are now bringing in. For example, the variable flow pump is something which is developed, proven technology in Brazil. And we have a team of engineers from India now learning that technology, and we have a team from Brazil coming to impart that technology in India. And we'll be able to bring that technology into India.
You're not talking about that
Emission.
elaborate?
No, there's no technology we are planning to buy. These are, as emission norms and Euro 5 and other things are coming forward, more and more sensors which have to do with emission sensing are going to become important in the automobile. For example, a sensor called the NOx sensor, which is an emission control sensor, is going to become mandatory. We already have prototypes and we are at a testing stage, and this was completely developed in-house over the last 36 months. So we are not going to buy. But in Germany, we would like to buy a company which is already in sensors to give us access into that market.
Emission control sensor in two-wheeler market something?
No, I think it will first come into the four-wheeler and then progress into the two-wheeler. So it is a natural progression. We have a speed sensor for the four-wheeler and two-wheeler. We have a temperature sensor for the four-wheeler and the two-wheeler. We have a fuel level sensor for the four-wheeler. So the NOx sensor which we have developed for the four-wheeler will automatically then get applicable to the two-wheeler when the norms become applicable for the two-wheeler. For example, gentleman here who came in a little earlier was asking me, do you think ABS will become mandatory for two-wheeler? And I said, for sure, yes, but not for a TVS 50 or a 100cc. I think for a 180cc and 200cc and above, it's a matter of, it is no more a luxury. Like a cell phone is no more a luxury, it is a necessity. As cities are growing larger, cities are getting wider and wider, workplaces are getting further away, homes are getting more expensive, so people are living further away. A two-wheeler or a four-wheeler is necessary. So it is not a luxury, it's a necessity. So, but for it to really grow, we need single-digit interest rates. I'm hoping at a 9% interest rate, we'd see high 20, or low, 20% plus growth rates in the two-wheeler segment and the entry-level car segment, just like homes.
How do you plan to raise this?
I think the government is already talking about a lot of infrastructure projects, and infrastructure projects will automatically then bring in demand for commercial vehicles, heavy commercial, small commercial vehicles, tractors and off-highway vehicles, which will automatically kickstart demand for this. And I think every indicator shows that infrastructure projects are starting to come to fruition. And perhaps end of this calendar year or end of next financial year, 2017, consumption of commercial vehicles will start picking up as infrastructure starts picking up. Yeah.
Of PT, you were talking about acquisitions and setting up of firms. How do you plan to raise them?
Like I mentioned a little earlier, ma'am, a significant portion of this would come through internal accruals. I would say at least about more than 50% of 300 crores out of that, and possibly about 200 crores or 300 crores of debt. And like I mentioned today, we are almost zero debt. So for at that point of time when we are raising that money, we would be a 1750 or a 1800 crore company. So a 200 or a 300 crore debt for a 1800 crore company is not at all significant. Even then, I'm a little conservative when it comes to debt. So we still would be at a very low level of leverage, even having gone in for those acquisitions of greenfield. The point I mentioned, we do not believe in investing in real estate, meaning we don't believe in buying land and putting up the building, because that's today more than 50% of the cost of the project. So we'd rather go to a global park operator, to an industrial park, get a custom built-to-suit building like we're doing in Pune today, and we are negotiating for in Vietnam, and put our money into actually what will produce money for us, which is the machines that are going to operate there. And that also gives us flexibility, because today you build a plant somewhere, dynamics change, and automotive manufacturing action moves elsewhere, then you're stuck to the real estate, and we're not a real estate operator to convert that to residential and then develop it, and like many textile mills are doing today. So we've decided to go with an asset-light model where we will put our money into productive assets like machines. And so having said that, it's not that we will never put money into a factory building or land. If we are not able to find the right industrial park operator who's able to give us a build to suit, and we have to be present in a market, then we may be forced to buy land and build, but that is not a preferred choice.
About plant or acquiring this plant and raising.
Can you be a little louder, ma'am? I can't hear you.
Your learnings from acquisition in raising. And when do you think it will break you in your investments in raising?
We were hoping for a 3-year recovery, but with the state of the economy and Brazil, every quarter we think we've hit the bottom, and then it doesn't stop. You ask, the World Bank economists, they don't know when is Brazil going to hit the bottom. But I think it's going to keep going down for another 18 to 24 months because they are hosting the Olympics this year. They don't have money for the Olympics. The borrowings are going to increase. The interest costs are going to increase, which means consumption is going to drop. So I think it will continue to degrow for another 2 years. It will hit a rock bottom in about 2 years and then probably be flat. And like I mentioned, only 2020, we can start seeing some sort of a growth in that market. So we are hoping that in 5 years we will recover our investment instead of 3 years. But that's your guess is as good.
Sensor company in Germany that you're looking at?
No. We are hoping to acquire a company that is in sensors in Europe. It could be UK, it could be Germany or France, because these are the three main countries where automotive sensor manufacturers are there. We have not identified a target company, but we have broadly said what should be the size of company that we buy, because many Indian companies go in and buy a very small company, and then the bandwidth of management is so high it's not worth it. Or go and buy a hugely loss-making company. Some of my colleagues in this industry, when I mean my colleagues, I don't mean in my company, Pricol, but in the auto component fraternity. I mean, you are in metal forming here and you go buy plastic injection molding there and you have no pedigree, and you just think because you're getting it for €1, you buy it over with liabilities, 8 plants, 10 plants, try to send Indians to turn it around. 9 out of 10 of those have been failures. 9 out of 10 of those acquisitions which have been thinking that we are buying it for $1 so we or €1 and then we send Indian management to turn it around. 9 out of 10 have been failures. So our plan is not to go and buy companies that are bankrupt or on the verge of bankruptcy, or in businesses that are not within our realm. So very clearly we have said that only in automotive, oil and water pump, catering to the segments we are operating in Europe and America, we want to buy a company of a particular size which is at least 250 crores or 200 crores thereabout in sales at the very minimum, and not more than a certain amount in sales, because then they are too large and then it's like a smaller fish trying to swallow a bigger fish. And we have like a 5-point agenda saying that what should be the technology roadmap, what should be the leadership roadmap, there a strength of leadership, strength of finance, strength of customer base, which is the 5th one.
The manufacturing.
The quality of manufacturing facilities. Unless we have 3 tick marks here, we don't want to consider an asset.
So things are likely to go for common drive systems or direct fuel injection systems.
Yes.
This replaces the oil pumps and the water pumps and so on. So how do you foresee your products on the long run?
We will continue. That's why if you notice, my focus is not going to be on the 4-wheeler personal passenger vehicle segment. I would like to qualify this statement, not on the 4-wheeler personal passenger vehicle segment. Before coming to the pumps, I'll talk about the instruments. We were one of the largest in India even for the cars. But by 2018, I will not be in a single car in this country in instrument clusters. The reason is, in 2020, at least 20% of the cars manufactured globally will not have an instrument cluster. It would have a screen manufactured by an LG or a Samsung, software written by an Infosys or a Wipro, and 150 sensors manufactured by 10 different companies. It would be one touchscreen, which will be your navigation, infotainment, it would be your driver information, climate control, everything bundled in together. There are players like Denso, there are players like Visteon, and the cost of developing this entire architecture and embedded electronics could be as high as $1 billion. Those companies have that kind of financial bandwidth, and they can spread it across multiple platforms globally. We don't have that bandwidth. So rather than be in a segment that I will slowly exit out of, consciously we've taken a decision and sold also. We've sold part of our business to Denso. We are in the midst of selling off another part of our business to someone else, and we are consciously exiting that business. But that does not mean we will not be in an instrument cluster in a tractor. I did mention that we want to be among the top 3 globally. Because in a tractor operating in the open sun, you will not have such high-tech gadgets. You will still have a bread and butter instrument cluster. In a two-wheeler, you will have a bread and butter instrument cluster. You will have an electronic cluster, you will have a digital cluster, you will have a cluster with 4 stepper motors, all of which we are already manufacturing today. So similarly in the pumps, our play is going to be more and more in the two-wheeler, in the off-highway vehicles, construction, commercial vehicles, tractors and so on and so forth. Again, these are segments which are not dominated by the very large players. Market is fragmented and it's very easy for us to have leadership within India or abroad, because our very simple vision of our President Sundar, our Sridhar, my colleague who heads finance, and Ganesh who heads marketing across the group, we've clearly told ourselves and all our associates in the company, whichever product we are in, we will be among the top 3 in whichever geography that we operate in. If we are not going to be among the top 3, or we don't have a solution to be among the top 3, we will exit those businesses today rather than put further energy into those businesses. So that has been part of our reorganization. And our acquisition strategies are also aligned to this.
So is advising on the advisors in different geographies and also...
We have decided not to use a firm. We have decided to use multiple firms like we did in Brazil, which has proven to be good, because we find for the legal advice in a particular geography, someone is good. For financial structuring advice, someone is good. So if you ask me, am I going to use an EY? Am I going to use a Deloitte? Am I going to use a KPMG? Again, it's a $1 million question, because in each geography, for example, there's a new business foray that we are planning right now, and we are working with 3 advisors, someone for the supply chain, someone for the business development and marketing, and someone for the financial structuring. So what we are increasingly finding that we would like to work with boutique agencies in those geographies who have a far better knowledge of the law of the land there. For example, in Brazil, we used Brazil's top legal firm to advise us how to structure the company legally, rather than use a law firm from India, because they don't have the laws of the land up there on their fingertips. Yes. So we want people who are hardwired to the local nuances. So increasingly we prefer to use boutique firms who have knowledge of that geography or knowledge of that industry or knowledge of that vertical. And that's how we are.
This internal restructuring, rebranding, did you hire?
No.
Firm?
Yes, we had a brand consultant, it was called Banana Brand Works, a Chennai-based company, a bunch of youngsters who this is something that I put a lot of personal effort into, because what you see the brand today, what you see the core values today is a reflection of my philosophy. Because when I head a company, I believe that the core values or the philosophy of the family that runs the company or the leader of the company will also be a reflection of the company's ethos. And so I personally spent a lot of time developing a lot of it, what you saw in the early part of the presentation, but it was aided by a company in Chennai called...
Journey, Vikram, after you took over, how has it been? What is it that you have been able to change, and what are the stone walls that you see?
Interesting question. I've never been involved in turning around a company. This is, for the previous 20 years of my life, I was always an incubator or a serial entrepreneur. I've always believed in starting, incubating businesses, either professionalizing them and moving on, or selling them and moving on, creating value. This was the first time I stepped into a business to turn it around in 2011. End of 2011, so it's about 4 years, you're right. It was challenging, it was complex, and it was an industry which was cutthroat, very small margins, and I think we were at our lowest end in 2010-11. We had huge labor problems, we had huge debt, We were bleeding cash. I had no clue about this industry, but I came in and spent 6 months in the company, half a week, to understand what was going wrong. And I got a pulse of what was going wrong. And I thought I knew what I needed to do to fix it. But I knew I couldn't do it myself. I needed professionals. Because this company was not professionally managed, but it was a family-owned business. And it was people who were with the company from the founding days with my father who grew with the company. So one of the first things I did was bring in professionals like Ganesh, like Sundar. Sridhar had just come on board that time. Because I believe you cannot be the master of everything. So I went around more on the strategic side what we should do. So one of the first things we did is shut down plants. We said, what is the minimum viable size for a plant? Got out of businesses where we were an also ran, though it was profitable, but it was taking a lot of management bandwidth. Went into, in a phased manner for automation, reduced our dependence on workforce. Because my father was a big socialist. He believed the primary job of an entrepreneur in this country was to create employment. I also believe that, but it has to be balanced with economics. So I took a more socio-economic model rather than a social model. So scaled down our workforce, got out of non-core areas, reduced our debts, turned around loss-making entities into profit-making entities, exited certain businesses. So if you actually go back into our last 5 years, you'd notice that we actually dipped in sales because we consolidated, we got rid, and then grew. So I always believe then shrink to grow. Shrink, get stronger, and then grow, which is what we're doing now. Also, we were an extremely Coimbatore-centric company. Management was Coimbatore-centric. Supplier base was Coimbatore-centric. Engineering was Coimbatore-centric. But we didn't have a single customer in Coimbatore. So I question the fundamental thing. Just because the founding family is from Coimbatore, but we don't have a single customer in Coimbatore, what's the point of having all these plants in Coimbatore? We're actually spending more money to transport these things, bring raw material in, do it and sell it back. So we've increasingly moved our manufacturing out of Coimbatore, made our plants autonomous. Our plant in, for example, in Gurgaon is run as a pretty independent plant. They buy from a local supplier base now, catering to the market there. They have their own engineering, etc. Strategically, it's managed from headquarters, but operating it's been made very autonomous. Same with Pune, same with everywhere else. So that's probably all these that we did. Probably what would have the headwinds I faced. Unfortunately, in this 4 years, 2 years has been one of the worst years for the automotive industry. So that was a double whammy. But the nice thing was we've been able to turn around even in the worst phases of the recession. So hopefully things will only get better. It can't get any worse.
And what's the hit you're taking on the forex side this year?
At present, we don't have much hits on the forex, even though the forex has moved in a downward trend. We were able to manage that, and we have taken precautionary steps, hedging and other things. So this year, to be precise, we have taken with our customers, wherever there is a forex indexing, we have done a forex indexing, metal indexing. So whenever the forex moves, within the next 3 months, you'll get that back. So we have taken all these precautionary steps, and this year, you will not find any big...
It will almost be next to nothing. And brought to fruition in the last 2 years. And today we have, for example, partnered with JCB on asset management solutions and have become a global partner. We are talking to multiple people like JCB globally. This is a very nice business model, and I think India is poised, can grow if it gets its act right in this place. And I'd love to personally grow as a company in such spaces, because there's a lot of software, there's a lot of hardware, there's a lot of components, both mechanical, electronic. So you're actually putting together, it's almost like a computer, you're assembling, building, writing the code and selling it. So your margins are better. You're giving a solution rather than selling a product, because when you sell a product, it's a commodity. when you sell a solution, it's not a commodity, because Apple is not, an iPhone is today not a product really, it's a solution. It probably costs 10,000 rupees to manufacture an iPhone in somewhere in China today or Taiwan, and we buy it for 50 odd thousand rupees. So we want to focus on such areas, and which is why these two verticals we've carved out, and we want to make an aggressive global play in that space. And I think we've now successfully productionized it, and it's actually on the field working for the last
1 year.
Little less than a year now.
Defense, Pricol engineering, and there is a
That's
shareholding between.
No, there is nothing else. That's a completely separate entity, privately owned by the family.
So what are the other sectors you are doing apart from automotive?
Are we talking Pricol, or are we talking Pricol as a group? Pricol as a group, we have a play in the hospitality space, we have a play in the real estate space, we have a play in paper and packaging, we have a play in engineering services and technology, we have a play in rail and defense. These are privately held entities or closely held entities. We do have PE investors in some of those ventures, but these are completely independent entities and completely different leadership. Common here is possibly Mr. Sridhar, who is the group finance director.
And now, what is your outlook on the percentage of the cost of a four-wheeler being electronics? You talked about telematics and all that. The estimates are somewhere around 40 to 50, and maybe even increasing beyond that.
Again, I don't know if you're present when I started talking about the. Let's take two extreme examples of cars. I'm not taking a Rolls Royce or a Bentley, which is a luxury crafted bespoke. But let's just take today a BMW 5 Series or a Mercedes E-Class, Audi A6, the luxury vehicle in India. And I would call an entry-level vehicle which India needs is a Citroën 2 chevaux, equivalent of today. Citroën 2 chevaux was, I think, a brilliant piece of mechanical engineering in the 1940s, developed during the war times, 30s and 40s. If we can have an equivalent of that, we don't need the REs. We need an equivalent of a 2 chevaux to cater to the mass market and the rural market, which will have almost no electronic content. And we would have a Mercedes or a E-Class or an A6 equivalent, which would have about, by value, not by weight or by a thing, but by value, about 70% electronic content. But today, in an entry-level car, I would call a Quid, or I would call Mahindra's launch yesterday, or Maruti. I would take any of these cars. It's about right, the figure you are saying. Electronics plays about 1/3 to 40%.
And Pricol share, where do you see yourself to be as a percentage of the electronics?
I can't give you an exact figure on that. How much wallet share in an automobile will I be? I would not. Again, it varies between, our play is not so much on the four-wheeler personal passenger vehicle. As I increasingly said, our play is more on off-highway, tractor, commercial, two-wheeler, where the electronic content is significantly lower.
The recent patents have been in which area?
More in the electronics.
Okay.
More in the electronics increasingly.
Anything on the driverless car that you are working on?
No, like I said, we are not focusing on the four-wheeler passenger vehicle segment, because I cannot be among the top 3 in the world or top 3 in India. So we've decided we will not make a play in that space.
So regarding the Europe, it's for companies.
The United States, again, North America, I'm not calling it United States, it would be North America, which would be from Mexico all the way to Canada. Just 3 countries, I'm talking of Mexico, United States and Canada. Most probably the United States, because that's where 90% of the companies are, would again be in the same space.
Who is helping you, Mr. Vikram? I just want a small clarification. It used to be a normal component player.
Yes.
In fact, it was started substitute for NK. Now it's become part of the group. So how come you become one of the major players within any foreign collaborations?
We did have collaborations over our history. We've had collaborations with Denso. We've had partnerships with Denso.
Acquisition?
No. It started with a technical know-how, technical transfer arrangement. We still have for certain parts with Denso a technology assistance agreement. We have with NHD of Japan a technical assistance agreement. And going forward also, We may have for sensors, we may have for certain areas a technical assistance agreement to develop certain technologies which we will not be able to develop in-house.
So can you say that it became a system supplier than component supplier?
Exactly.
And
we would like to be known as an automotive systems solution provider, not as an automotive commodity component maker. That's the transition we are hoping to see over the next 5 years. We are about halfway there.
Right. The speed governance we're talking about, are you talking about any of the STUs for this? STUs, state-run undertakings.
We are already supplying some of them.
So you have ASRP approval already?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
we are already supplying, but as you know, it's there's so much of legislation around it. There are so many stays about it. So a lot of it is beyond my control because if some judge somewhere decides to give a stay, so we'll take it as it comes. But we are supplying to a whole bunch of state transport corporations already. We started, stopped because of someone comes and takes a stay in court, it stops. Stay gets vacated, we start. So it's again something that we don't control, which is why we have not mapped any of those revenues significantly in our top line, because legislation in this country, we have too much of a democracy.
And how about you foray into passive safety products? Passive safety?
No.
That's become one of the,
we will not be playing in the safety area, because again that requires hundreds of billions of dollars of investment in development, which we do not have the deep enough pockets. So like I mentioned, I would like to play in an area where I have a reasonable understanding of the technology and the manufacturing, and when I get into that area, I have to be among the top three. But we have to be among the top three, Pricol. If we cannot be, we decide it's best not to get in there. Because the simple management rule, it's a rule of three. It's the top three players that actually make the money in any business. Everyone else are also runs. Again, there are outliers to this, like the Rolls Royces and the Bentleys of the world. Those are outliers. They are bespoke products, but in a commodity, in a mass market product, it is the rule of three. So which is something very clearly I believed in over my 20 years of entrepreneurship. If we decide we are going to play in the Tamil Nadu market or the Coimbatore market or the Indian market or the South Asian market or the global market, whichever market we define as our boundary to play in, we need to be among the top three within 5 years of entering into that business and have a roadmap to get there. If we are unable to, we'd rather not get into that business, or if we are already in and not able to get there, we should exit.
The increasing standardization happening in the telematics, driver information systems.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving from the proprietary to...
Yes.
I'll just add on to this because so much discussion on the telematics side. The telematics typically which is used in personal passenger vehicle or in any other asset tracking system has been more of a vehicle tracking system. But the solutions that we have developed and deployed in tractor and off-highway is more towards the value for the end customer. In terms of giving in the service schedules, for example, the one that we have developed for a off-highway, the telematics solution, linked with the fuel sensing, because most of the JCBs or any other kind of vehicles, the owner is not the driver of the vehicle. So when there is a fuel theft which happens, the fuel level sends a rapid drop in the fuel which happens. The owner gets an SMS. So that's a kind of a solution which on the telematics which is being developed rather than the general vehicle tracking system.
Just to give you another example, we're developing a product for the mining segment, be it in Colombia, be it in Indonesia. Indonesia is a collection of remote islands, and a lot of those mines are in Kalimantan and Sulawesi, which is far away from Jakarta. You have these huge pieces of mining equipment, which sit on these massive tires, which is much more expensive than aircraft tire. And it's an uneducated truck operator operating that piece of equipment. And each of those tires are about $5,000. Now, if he doesn't inflate it correctly, the life of that tire is going to be half. And we're talking of 8 such tires on one of those huge mining equipment. I call it missionary. It's not really a transport, it's missionary. Now, if the we have the tire pressure sensor with telematics, with an SMS warning system, which even the owner, the fleet owner sitting in Jakarta is going to get an alert. He would be able to call the operator, ask the vehicle to stop and inflate it. Because otherwise it would mean an additional $40,000 of expense per year, which is huge. Now, what is the cost of a tire pressure sensor on 8 tires with the telematic systems with an SMS on a GPS network? It's not even $4,000. So it's not about navigation, telematics. Telematics is a very, very wide range of applications, both in the industrial and automotive segment. I mean, a lot of people think telematics is navigation, really. No. I mean, telematics, like Sundara President mentioned, has, you have gas pipelines that are running across Siberia in the middle of the desert in Saudi Arabia, and you need to know certain parameters of what's happening. That's telematics. That's asset management solutions. So that's why we are calling it asset management solutions and systems rather than just pure telematics.
Any work happening between Pricol and some of these institutions like IITs?
Yes, that's an area which I'm increasingly very fond of doing that. Actually, I sit on the board of one of the very leading engineering institutions also as chairman of the advisory board. And I'm pushing more and more of these institutions to do applied research rather than research for the sake of research. So actually we have a bunch of PhDs and master students who are doing collaborative research for us on developing products, professors, PhD students, developing products for us along with our development engineers. I very, very firmly believe in that model. That's been the success of the United States. That's been the success of a large part of the UK. But the academic institutional linkage is very, very deep in India. We have a long way to go there. That's why the number of patents we produce in this country are also so low compared to the Western world.
Thank you.